So I've made over $1 million selling AI solutions to businesses, but if you ask me how ChatGPT actually works, I'd probably just stare blankly. It's a bit embarrassing. So today, my wife, who actually is a software engineer and actually does understand AI, is going to be breaking down and explaining what ChatGPT is like you're a 5-year-old. Because to be honest, if we're going to keep selling AI solutions, we kind of need to understand it properly. And so do you. All right, let's listen to this.
You ask ChatGPT a question, and somehow it gives you a perfect answer that sounds like it was written by a human. Magic, right? But how did we create a computer that can chat with you like your smartest friend? Today, I'll explain how ChatGPT actually works to you like you're 5 years old. And by the end of this, you'll finally understand why this computer can write poems, solve math problems, and even argue with you about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It turns out it's not actually magic. Shocker, I know. It's not a tiny person.
I thought ChatGPT was magic. Is it magic?
No, we'll find out.
Cool.
Person trapped inside your computer, furiously typing up responses, and it's not reading every book in the world in real time to answer your questions. What it is actually is a very clever pattern matching machine that learned to predict what word.
Bro, what is a pattern matching machine? Is this like Tinder for GPT?
I mean, ChatGPT doesn't actually have a brain, right? So it doesn't actually know how to write a sentence. What it does is it predicts every single word straight after each other. So it goes this, and then it's likely it's going to be is, a. So every word is predicted kind of individually on what comes next in the sentence. So if it's got like, the cat sat on the...
Man.
Nice. So
Yeah.
it just predicts the next word is probably going to be Matt. And it does the same thing when it generates emails, writing strategies, creates content, analyzing your notes, or even helping you brainstorm. It just kind of builds everything, each word at a time.
Okay. But then what is it actually like? If ChatGPT doesn't actually understand meaning, how can it still be useful?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Like, how does it pattern matches? It does every single word after each other, but then how does it actually understand? So it doesn't understand the words the way that like we do, but it does understand patterns really well. So it's seen like billions of sentences or hundreds of thousands of paragraphs, that kind of thing. So it knows what sounds right and what kind of belongs together. So that's how it can write, all of these emails and scripts. And it doesn't really need to have understanding. It just needs to know, does this follow the same pattern? So it kind of approximates the intelligence instead of actually being necessarily intelligent the way that humans are through like human reasoning.
Sweet.
What word should come next in a sentence by reading billions and billions of examples? Imagine you have a super smart friend who's read every single book,
Nah, that's hard.
every website, every article, and every story ever written. And not just read them once, but memorized every single pattern of how words fit together. This friend noticed that when someone writes, "the cat sat on the next word is usually mat or chair or table. They never just randomly say elephant or spaceship. That super smart friend is basically what ChatGPT is, except instead of a person, it's a computer program that found patterns in more text than any human could ever read in 1,000 lifetimes. But here's where it gets really interesting. ChatGPT doesn't actually understand what words mean the way that you and I do. When you hear the word dog, you might picture a furry animal that barks and wags its tail. ChatGPT doesn't see that picture. Instead, it knows that the word dog often appears near words like bark, tail, pet, walk, and treats. It learned that these words like to hang out together, kinda like how you know that peanut butter and jelly are friends, or how you know that when someone says knock knock, you're supposed to say, who's there? Think of it like this. Imagine you're playing a game where someone gives you the beginning of a sentence, and you have to guess what comes next. If I say, I'm going to brush my, you'd probably guess teeth or hair, right? You wouldn't guess elephant or homework. That's because you've heard people say brush my teeth and brush my hair many times before. ChatGPT plays this same guessing game, but it's incredibly good at it because it's seen billions of examples of how people put words together. Now, let's talk about how ChatGPT actually learned all these patterns. It doesn't happen overnight like magic. It took a very long time and a lot of very powerful computers working together. The process is called training. And it's kind of like teaching a baby to talk, except this baby can process millions of sentences every single second. During training, ChatGPT was shown enormous amounts of text. We're talking about books, websites, articles, stories, and conversations. Millions and millions of them.
Training is actually like what they did before, if you know what I mean. So it's not Like it's not, I mean, currently is still getting trained, but it took them a long, long time before to train ChatGPT, so it knew about all of these things. That's why if you hear it all the time, it says like January 2024 is when it knows everything up to January 2024, because it got trained on data all the way to January 2024.
Wait. So someone's like, is it someone or something is feeding it information and then it updates and then you can use ChatGPT?
Yeah, so it did a bunch of that over many years before we even were able to use it. So it knew about all of these things, and that was trained for a long time, and then we got to use it. It didn't just kind of come out the bag and we were just like, oh, let's just write anything and see what happens.
It's kind of how it felt.
That came later. It took a lot of work beforehand.
And millions of them. But here's the clever part. The trainers didn't show ChatGPT complete sentences. Instead, they showed it sentences with words missing, and ChatGPT had to guess what the missing words were. It was like the most intense fill-in-the-blank test ever.
Why would they do that? Why would they hide specific words?
So they want to hide it so that they can see what pattern it would match against. So it's like what they just said. If it says, I'm going to brush my... And if it said elephant, we'd be like, that's probably wrong. Let's update that. So then every time it gets it wrong, we say, that's not what it is. And then it trains itself, it adjusts itself. So we'd be like, yeah, I'm going to brush my... And
teeth.
Then say elephant, and it will be like, no, that's wrong. It's I'm going to brush my teeth. So then next time it's like, oh, every time it sees I'm going to brush my... It will say...
Teeth.
Yeah, there we go.
But this is in relation to humans. Like, what if it's in relation to like an elephant?
Yeah, so exactly. So then you talk about, if it's talking about elephants beforehand in the context, it learns that this word is going to come together.
I see.
I'm going to brush my tail, or whatever it is. But it kind of forces the AI to notice the patterns in the language, understand the context so around it. So like you mentioned, if we're talking about hair, then it's going to know about brushing your hair. If we're talking about teeth, it's going to know about brushing your teeth because it needs to know the context, and it kind of has to guess logically what fits. Just think of it like a big if-else thing going on in your brain going, if it says brush, say, is it talking about an animal? Is it talking about a head of hair? Is it talking about teeth? And then say teeth, for eat, or teeth, or hair, or tail for each of the ones.
That's confusing.
Now at first, ChatGPT was terrible at this game. I mean, it would guess completely random words that made no sense at all. If you showed it, the sky is, then it might guess purple or sandwich, or even 17. But every time it guessed wrong, the trainers would show it the correct answer. They'd say, no, silly computer.
It's like training a dog, where you're like, sit. And if it stands, it doesn't get a treat. But if it sits, it gets a treat. And it's like, then what does it do? It
gets rewarded?
It learns.
It
right?
learns, yes.
It gets, what do we call it? What do we do to a dog?
Conditioning.
What do you do to your dog?
You pet them.
You train them.
You train them.
And what are we doing to the AI model?
Shit, I need to get trained.
We're training them.
Got it. Nice.
The sky is blue, and ChatGPT would adjust its guessing strategy just a tiny bit. Then they'd try again with a different sentence. This happened billions and billions of times. And slowly, very slowly, ChatGPT started to notice patterns. It began to understand that sky often goes with blue, that cats often meow, and that when someone asks, "How are you?" the response is usually something like, "I'm fine, thank you." It was like watching a baby learn to speak, except this baby was learning from every conversation that had ever happened on the internet. But ChatGPT isn't just one big brain. It's actually made up of many smaller parts called neural networks. Think of these like tiny teams of workers, each specializing in different jobs. Some teams are really good at understanding grammar. Others are great at remembering what happened earlier in a conversation. Some teams focus on understanding context, like knowing that bank means a place with money when you're talking about deposits, but it means the side of a river when you're talking about fishing. These neural networks work together like a really well-organized...
You just imagine how difficult this would be.
Yeah.
Pretty insane.
How much work did this
what
take?
they've achieved, because imagine trying to learn every single thing on the internet up to 2024, Jan.
Organized group project. When you ask ChatGPT a question, different teams jump into action. The grammar team makes sure that the response follows proper sentence structure. The context team makes sure that the answer makes sense based on what you've been talking about. The knowledge team pulls up relevant information from all those patterns it learned during training. And the personality team makes sure that the response sounds natural and helpful, not robotic and weird. Now, the really cool part is how ChatGPT handles the actual process of generating a response. When you type a question, ChatGPT doesn't immediately know what its full answer will be. Instead, it generates one word at a time, always asking itself, given everything.
Yeah, but like when I do, when you ask ChatGPT a question, it gives you like a long paragraph. How does it, if it generates one word at a time, how does it generate these long responses?
So even though it produces it like kind of word by word, it will look at your entire question and your entire conversation that you've had with it, and all the patterns that it's learned, and the statistical likelihood of future words. It will be like, is it going to be leaf or tree? It's got 50% chance to be leaf. It's got 75% chance to be tree. So let's go with tree. And because it can read the whole context, and it'll add it as part of its knowledge. So we talked about the knowledge being all the way from the internet, from every book that's been around, all of that. It just adds the conversation as part of that knowledge, so it can kind of reason, pattern recognize from that as well as context.
Sweet.
So it's kind of similar to how a human speaks. You don't actually sit there and think, I will say this word after this word. It kind of is just an idea in your head and comes out.
Well, most people don't, but some people do.
Some people might.
That came before, what's the most likely next word? It's like playing that word guessing game that we talked about earlier, but doing it continuously for every single word in its response. So if you ask, what's the weather like? ChatGPT might start by thinking that the first word should probably be I or the or today. Let's say it picks I. Then it thinks, okay, I started with I, so what usually comes after that? Maybe it picks don't. Then it thinks, I don't. What comes next? And it might choose have. And then it just continues this process, word by word, building up its response. I don't have access to real-time weather data, but you can check. Each word choice is based on all the patterns that ChatGPT learned during training, plus everything that's happened in your current conversation. It is constantly balancing what it learned from all those books and websites with what makes sense in the context of your specific question. Now, you might wonder how...
That's why it's sometimes, you say, actually it's like this, and then it'll go, oh yeah, you're right, that's how it is, because it's taking the context in from the conversation instead of from its training data.
How ChatGPT remembers what you talked about earlier in your conversation. After all, it's just guessing one word at a time, so how does it keep track of whether or not you're talking about dogs or homework or your favorite ice cream flavor? This is where something called attention comes in, and it's probably the coolest part of how ChatGPT works. Think of attention like having a really good memory for important details. When you're having a conversation...
What is attention, and why is it important?
Because attention is kind of... I'm sure he's going to explain it in a second. But attention is the AI's ability to kind of decide what part of the conversation is important right now. So, it's got all of your conversation history, and it's have to referencing, what is it that she's talking about right now, and what should I use as this is the most important bit of information. So if, I don't know, if you were looking at houses and you're talking about houses before, and you're saying, I'm looking for a new house, and then later you said, give me a good area. It will know that you're looking for a new house in a new area. And then it'll link those two together and then know that you're talking about a new house, even if you haven't said, I'm looking for a new house. I'm looking for a good area in a new house. Make sense?
Kind of.
When you're having a conversation with a friend, you naturally remember the important parts of what they said earlier. If they mention that they've got a test tomorrow, then you might ask about it later. ChatGPT has a very similar ability, except it can pay attention to everything that's been said in your conversation simultaneously. Every time ChatGPT generates a new word, it looks back at everything that's been said so far and asks, what parts of this conversation are most important for figuring out what word comes next? If you asked about your pet dog 5 minutes ago and now you're asking about buying food, ChatGPT can connect those dots and realize that you're probably asking about dog food, not people food. But here's something really important to understand.
And that's why ChatGPT feels so intelligent, is because it can remember what you talked about. You don't have to ask it every time like you would in Google. So if you're asking Google, you can't just hope that it remembered what you searched before, right?
No.
But that's why this makes it feel so different and so intelligent compared to how we used to do it.
And ChatGPT doesn't actually know facts the way that you do. I mean, when you know that Paris is in France, you've got a clear, definite piece of knowledge. ChatGPT...
If it doesn't store facts like humans do, how does it know if the answer is correct? Or like, how does it answer it correctly?
So it's kind of what we talked about earlier. It's all about that pattern recognition. So it will have seen lots of correct answers previously in training, right? Because it's gone through every single question asked. So it's likely that your question's already been asked before by someone. So it's gone through and learned what the patterns of that correctness is. But that's also why, I don't know if you realize, when it says something wrong, it says it with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, it does.
So this works well most of the time, because most of the time when you ask a question, it's been asked before and it's been answered correctly. But there are also times where it's been asked before and answered incorrectly, or things have changed and it's now incorrect from when it was, back when it got trained. So that's why it can be like, I'm sure this is the current president.
Like, no,
when it's not.
You're a bit wrong.
So yeah, that's why you got to always validate everything that it says.
Have you seen the Donald Trump dance? Anyways, cool.
Doesn't store facts like that. Instead, it learns that words Paris and France often appear together in sentences, along with words like capital and city. So when you ask about Paris, it can generate text that sounds like it knows Paris is the capital of France, but it's really just using the patterns that it learned to predict what words should go together. And this is why ChatGPT sometimes makes mistakes, or says things that sound confident but are actually wrong. It's not lying to you or trying to trick you, it's just following the patterns that it's learned, and sometimes those patterns lead to incorrect conclusions. It's like if you learned that red and apple often go together. You might assume that all apples are red, even though some are green or yellow. The training process also included another important step called fine-tuning. After ChatGPT...
So what is fine-tuning, and can I like have ChatGPT for my own business or utilize for me personally?
Yeah, for sure. So fine-tuning is kind of the process after training. So when you train your dog, you've trained it and it can pee outside now, but you still kind of want it to pee in a specific corner or something like that. It's about kind of the small tweaks that you would do after this big training thing. So ChatGPT is still being trained, right? Like it's still learning now because it's got even more input from all these people that are using it. So it's kind of the process after training where like you rate your answers, it corrects its tone, it kind of improves its politeness, shapes its behavior, and you can even fine tune it specifically for your business. So if you think about when everyone says, I make AI agents or I make an AI model for my business who represents me, that's because you train it on your tone, your product, what your process is, what your industry is, what your niche is, that kind of thing. So that's how you can build like an AI chatbot that's specific to you, because you teach it your specific context that it wouldn't know from anywhere else. And then it can be like, you can reach from that and be like, oh, it said to talk like this. Oh, it said to speak about this product.
Sweet.
Yeah, kind of like a separate knowledge base.
So you can store your stuff personally in GPT. That's why. Got it. Okay.
And all those basic patterns from books and websites, human trainers had conversations with it and rated its responses. They would tell it which answers were helpful and which ones were confusing or wrong. This helped ChatGPT learn not just how to predict words, but how to be a good conversational partner. Think of it like learning to be polite. You might naturally learn that please and thank you are good words to use, but you also need someone to teach you when and how to use them properly. The human trainers helped ChatGPT learn to be helpful, harmless, and honest in its conversations. ChatGPT also learned to follow instructions. During training, people would give it tasks like write a poem about cats or explain photosynthesis simply, and then rate how well it followed those instructions. Over time, ChatGPT got better at understanding what people wanted and delivering responses that matched their requests. One of the most amazing things about ChatGPT is that it can handle tasks that it was never specifically trained to do.
What? Huh? How does that happen?
So it's the same way that, you could read a word that you've never read before, because you kind of know that when you put these letters together,
That's what it sounds like.
this is what it sounds like.
Oh.
So because AI has kind of learned a general rule of language and structure and logic, it kind of understands a little bit of the grammar and the vocabulary and the reasoning, it's not human reasoning, but like logic reasoning, that when you do this, it probably sounds like this.
It's kind of like you.
Basically.
Yeah.
And so that's why you can write a story about like anything and you've never written it before, but it's just kind of looked at the patterns and be like, that probably goes after this and that goes after this. And that's how it applies it to new tasks as well. And that's why it makes it so powerful, right? Like we use generation so much, and that's what everybody mostly uses it for, especially in this like entrepreneur world where they're trying to generate copy, generate emails, generate responses on chats and that kind of thing. So this is how it kind of takes all that and makes something up, but with context and kind of with these patterns that it's learned.
Fantastic. And can it hallucinate? I know this is...
Yeah, that's what we talked about before, right? It can be very confidently getting something wrong because it's a pattern it's previously learned.
So that's hallucination.
So when it hallucinates, all that means is it was told that word probably comes after this word. It was told that probably it was a green apple, but you could have been talking about a red apple.
So it's the context of the actual...
So it's just a pattern that it learned was not fit for what you actually wanted.
I mean, nobody taught it how to write haikus or solve specific math problems or create recipes. But because it learns such rich patterns about how language works, it can combine those patterns in creative ways to tackle new challenges. It's like how once you learn the rules of grammar and a big vocabulary, you can write stories about anything, even if you've never written about that specific topic before. The computers that run ChatGPT are incredibly powerful. I mean, we're talking about machines that can perform trillions of calculations per second. So when you send a message to ChatGPT, it gets processed by these supercomputers that work together to analyze your question, consider all the relevant patterns, and generate a response. And all of this is happening in just a few seconds, which is pretty remarkable when you think about how much computational work is involved. ChatGPT also has some built-in safety features. During training, it learned to avoid generating harmful, offensive, or dangerous content. It's like having a really good sense of what's appropriate to say in difficult situations. If you ask it to help you with something harmful, it'll politely decline and often suggest a better alternative. But ChatGPT isn't perfect, and it's important to remember its limitations. It can't browse the internet in real time, so its knowledge has a cutoff date. It can't learn or remember information from one conversation to the next. Each time you start a new chat, it's like meeting ChatGPT for the first time. And while it's very good at generating human-like text,
Wait, so if GPT forgets, like your conversations, how can I build AI that remembers my customers or remembers conversations that we've had?
Yeah, so it kind of forgets chats kind of on purpose. Otherwise, it would be a crazy knowledge base knowing everything about everyone.
It'd be quite expensive, right?
It would also be quite expensive to store all of that. It's kind of mostly, I think it's designed for privacy. But you can add memory. So as we mentioned, like before, where you can give it your own context. So you can say like, these are my products, this is how I want you to speak, that kind of thing. You can also add like a database of things. You can add connection to like your CRM. You can even, use it in like Make or NAN or Zapier, GoHighLevel, like through API requests. But that's an easy way of saying just a little connection on the back, so you don't have to actually type in ChatGPT. And these tools can help store all this data for you. So actually, what happens is when you send a message, it sends it with all of its context, not necessarily remembering it. And that's how you can build, AI sales agents, support agents, onboarding systems, and client success bots, and voice bots, and everything like that. Okay.
This is what we built. Gotcha. Sweet.
Consciousness or emotions the way that humans do. So, to recap this whole adventure in artificial intelligence, ChatGPT learned to chat by reading billions of examples of human text and finding patterns in how we put words together. It generates responses by predicting one word at a time, using all those patterns that it learned plus the context of your conversation. It's like having a friend who's read everything ever written and is really, really good at guessing what you want to hear next. Now go, have a conversation with an AI and remember that you're basically talking to the world's most sophisticated word prediction machine. Don't let it convince you that it has feelings, though.
Brilliant. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for explaining this video to us, Sabs. I think that gave us a little bit more of a context on how ChatGPT actually works. If you'd like to watch more stuff about what AI and how it works, there'll be a link in the description over here, up here. And if you want access to any of the resources or templates that we have educating you on how we're using AI in our $1 million plus business and how you can use it too, there'll be a link in the description. Anything else? AI Zabs? AI Zabs says bye. Bye for now.